I always wanted to become a journalist, and today I am one. Hello, everyone. Namaste. I am Soumya Vajapyee. Well, there are very few people who are as lucky as me who get to live their dream as their profession. And, while watching the other speakers, I realized that they had such beautiful narratives to give up. In my case, I think I will just stick to one facet that I abide by as a journalist, and that is honesty. I don't have a script, but I will just speak my heart out and address a couple of things that I think are imperative when it comes to journalism. So I think the seed of journalism was planted in me unknowingly by my father while growing up, because he was a journalist. I hail from Lucknow, and I was very impacted and impressed with the kind of clout that came along with journalism. It's respectful, it's courageous, it's empowering, it's something that makes a change, and I wanted to be a part of that change. So back in 2021, I came to Mumbai as a postgraduate student of journalism and mass comm. Luckily, again, blessed are those who get to start their career in the right place, and I was lucky enough to be hired as a trainee journalist with Hindustan Times back in 2012. I very vividly remember my interview with the then resident editor of Hindustan Times. I remember sitting across the table with him, and he was really impressed with this thesis that I had worked on the impact of ghazals in Bollywood. So he asked me, what is the beat that you would want to write on? What is the journalist that you would want to become? And I instantly said music. So he went on, he was like, what if I don't give you music? So I said, well, then I don't need your job. Now believe me, for somebody who's just a student, who is just done with post-graduation, has no base whatsoever, no godfathers in the industry, it's a huge call to make, to give that kind of an answer to a resident editor. But I think that answer was not propelled by overconfidence. It was actually a clarity on what I wanted my life to be, what I wanted it to look like, and I wasn't okay with anything that was thrown my way. I think that became a prerequisite, a foundation for me as far as journalism was concerned, because that's something I wanted to live. That's not a profession that I wanted to, have and to be a different personality when I went back. So fortunately, I got the job, and that was my first stint. And would you believe my first byline was actually on an article on the demise of ghazals in Bollywood. So life went on, and I remember, in these 14 years of my career as a journalist, there are a lot of changes that I have seen in the profession. I was among those fortunate people who got to start their career with print, because they say that once you start with print, you get the basics right. So as a kid growing up, I always wanted to be a broadcast journalist, but back in college, I'd already realized that the sham that broadcast had become. It was more like acting on stage, and everything was about TRPs. There was no news out there. So I was enjoying 2 years of, just going about the right kind of journalism as a print journalist. And boom, then came this new phenomenon called MediaNet. Now, MediaNet means paid news, something that perhaps all of us know about. All of us were heartbroken that, rather than, as journalists, you're supposed to think, where is my story? What is it that I can do? What is it that one interview that I can do? Can I interview that CEO? Can I interview this one brand? Can I write about this one song? And then suddenly you have found yourself shackled, thinking what not to do, rather than what to do, which was like the basic premise of journalism. So, so I'll give you an example. So as a music journalist, I was free to write about any song that came up. But as soon as MediaNet transcended, a song that was backed by a T-series, or any music label, or a film, or any international artist couldn't be written about. Why? Because that was looked at as a business prospect. So while as a music journalist, I was driven to, write about that one song, which is like come after decades and is being spoken about, my editors would tell the business team back in the newsroom to go and cash in on that opportunity. Of course, it was heartbreaking. So initially, as a young journalist, you would hate your editors and you would think that, there's no journalism anymore. You would doubt the intent of your news organization. But then you mature up, You mature up to realize that change is the only constant. And that change had to happen. That change had to happen to sustain the business, to ensure that my journalism, the stories that I was writing, the bylines that I was earning, did turn into some money at the end of the month. Because that's the reality. So for any organization, revenue is directly proportional to your growth. And like for news organizations, it is the number of ads that kind of showcase how well you're doing. So this became another structure for your revenue generation, and then you had to find your way around it. So I think the day I realized to be okay with this change, to befriend MediaNet, and to find my way as a journalist around it was the day I became ready for a leadership role. Again, speaking of change, I remember, back in the day, print used to be as holy as the Bible. We would all wait for that one Doordarshan news to air because, that was all about honesty. To today, when even paparazzi call themselves, they call themselves journalists and, everything, even citizen journalism is thriving. Something that has zero fact check, that has very less base. But then again, this is the irony of living in an era that is run by social media, that is guarded by YouTube. So what do you do in a scenario like that? You hold on to that one facet that is extremely crucial, that makes you a journalist. That has been spoken about already, but I think one thing that has gone AWOL is empathy. This has been my greatest strengths as a journalist. I have been a journalist, you've read my profile, I've been a journalist for 14 years. I have close to 1,000 bylines to my credit. And I bet you that I think 900 out of those are earned because of the relationships I've earned over the last 14 years. So people who used to be celebrities for me back in the day when I was growing up and I was still studying are close associates, are family now. That's because of this one strength that I held on to, which is empathy. I will give you a very simple, innocent example on how you go about it as a journalist to decide whether something is worth your empathy or not. I'll not name anybody, but this is again music. So there is this A-list musician. I had reached out to him for a feature on Ganesh Chaturthi, and Arden he celebrates Ganesh Chaturthi really well at his home, and we were talking, and then he had lost his mother a few months ago. So he happened to mention her and how this festival would be absolutely incomplete, colorless without his mother, and he went on a memory trip, giving beautiful anecdotes about the time he spent with his mother celebrating the festival and how this would be anything but that. So I got beautiful anecdotes. I had written them down. I was just filing my feature when I get a call from him 5 minutes later. And he says, Soumya, I would request you to not write my mom's part because it might come across as me cashing in on my sadness, on my mom's loss. Now, as a journalist, I think that was the most important aspect of that interview. That emotional, that emotional quotient that he had not opened up about ever. But my instant reaction was, of course, be rest assured, nothing about your mom would be written about. Believe me, that A-list musician went on to become family to me, and I take a lot of pride in the kind of stories I have managed to do after that day with that same person. So I also teach journalism. I am a professor of journalism. I've been doing that for over a decade. And this is one thing that I always teach my students, that, you know, if you can earn a relationship and a decent story, go for it. Your stories should never be your winning cards, because that one byline might cost you a relationship. Another extremely important example that helps you demarcate between empathy and where it shouldn't, you know, even hover around. So we all remember the Me Too era, right? So I was among those fortunate journalists who got to write the sensational stories about a lot of Me Too revelations in the industry. And there was this one musician duo. I got a couple of verified accounts about, you know, their involvement in this entire Me Too movement. And I was just about to file my story. Now they call me as friends, hoping that I would help them. I would not, you know, entertain the accounts of those two struggling women musicians who were subjected to the atrocities of, you know, having to work with them. So they were like, Soumya, we are friends. Let's, you know, we have to work together. We have had such a long relationship. So please, I mean, if you can let this go. Well, was there any room for empathy there? I'm sorry. My empathy was in the right space, and I did go ahead and write about them, though I got a lot of threats after that. But I forced them to move to Dubai for 3 years. So again, my profession gives me a lot of pride because it empowers me to be the person I always wanted to be. I get to live my profession every single day. And, you know, that is something I still hold on to. You know, I want to, I always tell my husband that I want to die working. And I don't think there can be anything more precious than that. So since I come from Lucknow, I would like to end this on the same note, on the same feeling that I held on to during my first interview at Hindustan Times. मंजिल उन्हीं को मिलती है जिनके सपनों में जान होती है. मंजिल उन्हीं को मिलती है जिनके सपनों में जान होती है. पंख से कुछ नहीं होता, हौसलों से उड़ान होती है. Thank you.